I'm Karen Phillip, a passionate advocate for doing good. I always knew I was going to have a career helping people, but I wasn't sure how. I've met some amazing people who seem to understand the what and the how of doing good. We often hear about their work, but who are they? I decided to have a space where they could share about their work and common sense steps to doing good better. So in today's episode of Common Sense Steps to Doing Good, we're just talking about who we are, our challenges in doing good, the triumphs that we experience, and any advice that we have for other future do-gooders. And with me today, I have two of my ride or die do-gooders. One I walked up to and I was just like, hi, you're going to be my friend. And she just was like, okay, stranger. I'll be polite to you because we're in a work setting. And she has been my friend for like 8-9 years now.
That's true.
Even found me a husband. She's like, awesome.
That's right.
And then the other one, I called him and I was like, hi, I have this opportunity, but I'm not sure about the finances. And he's like, hey there. And since then, which is like
5 years ago.
5 years now, he has been there on by my side. So thank you for being here, Leigh and Worrell and Christon Herbert. It's just a pleasure to also do this with you all as well.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
So earlier we were talking about the challenges and, well, talking about the personalities in life. That some persons like attachment, some persons like dogs, some persons are parents. Well, out of this trio, only one is a parent.
Just me, yeah.
And so therefore I think she has the greatest challenge in doing good. Like last night I went to dinner and I was enjoying the company of the 4-year-old until it was time to eat. And homegirl had already finished eating, and so she decided that was the right time to just like keep on hitting my arm. And I'm like, you're not mine, so I can't discipline you. And I just want to eat my meal in peace. And I was like, how do parents do this? Like they talk about the lack of sleep, but like, do you get to eat in peace? Like,
Start with your parent.
I don't really think about that challenge. I have a supportive partner, so I think that really helps. A lot of times when people ask that question of women, they just assume that they do it all. I have always made it very clear I'm not a superwoman. I have no special skills. I do not do it all. I need help. So, doing work in social development, like, really brought home to me that we live in community, so I extend that to myself, and I rely on my community to assist me when they need to be out, when they need to do anything. I think the real challenge for me is, especially working with young people, thinking about how I raise my son and want him to kind of avoid the things that I see young people going through, and just thinking about how I can do that with all the influences that are outside of me. That's the only thing that really, being in this space, like, and being a parent, like, I really think about. And also just bringing home how present you have to be as a parent, how much you have to pour into your child, and making sure that your child knows that you are a safe space. Working with different communities, like particularly LGBT communities, and you hear the stories about how parents abandon their children, sever ties over gender, over their sexuality. It's heartbreaking. So I think it just really underscores for me how much I want to let my child know that I am supportive, I'm a safe space, and also thinking about working with young people who are in conflict with the law, how I can try my best to be a good example so that he doesn't look elsewhere for role models outside of his home.
so we kind of started by your current, like where you are now and how it shapes your ability to do good. But do you think your community of origin shaped how you came to do good in the way you do it currently?
Yes. So my mother and my grandmother, they were, I was raised Adventist, so we had community services. And so my mother and my grandmothers were both very involved with that. So feeding people in the community, doing give back, helping with community projects was a big part of their life. And even in little things that my mother would braid hair on Sundays for a single father in the community. His daughter's here, yeah. Every Sunday, just little things like that just underscore how much, like I said, living in community is really important. And, also as much as I have many things that I could say about Adventism, they are very community focused.
Yeah.
And so their imprint in communities, in scholarships, and, just being a big presence wherever they are, like that is still a big part of them. So growing up Adventist definitely helped me to see why those things mattered.
Yeah, I was, so it's similar for me. It was my upbringing. Like my parents are very externally focused and helping other persons. Like just last week, he took a bunch of boys to a fundraising gala so that they will have that experience that he had, like, and that kind of thing. And I grew up with having a map on the wall that we used to have to point at the countries and decide which country we were going to pray for. Of course, the irony is when I said I wanted to be a missionary, they're like, whoops, what are we doing there? So I've always been also very external thinking and not knowing how to do good, but knowing that I'm going to do good in any area that I could possibly put my hands to. What's your experience in stumbling into the social development, do good field?
For me, it really started, I would say, maybe around, university stage. When I was growing up, had our own challenges with regards to, life and just living in general. But I feel in Barbados, there's always an avenue for persons coming from certain communities to be able to, aspire to do well for them and well for their families. So, when I was in UE, I stumbled upon a program, Empowerment Youth International, and, in that program, you kind of see children that are troubled, that don't have, supportive parents, they don't have specific avenues or persons to talk to or channel their energy into. So, they end up being cast aside or they end up being, pushed in a box and then they can't get out of that box. Yeah. And to me, I think that's one of the difficulties that we face as a community. And to me, it also reshaped, my way of thinking. Because sometimes you could be very individualistic. You could go head on and look, this is what I want to do for me. But after seeing, these situations, it made it kind of easy to say, what can I do for others as it relates to, building, for instance, NGOs. I think that's something that I've been passionate about from the time I met Empowerment Youth International, kind of strengthening their capacity in any way possible, assisting them with proposal writing, assisting them with life. And, just harking back to the previous point where Leanne spoke about, having like relationships and having like children, and I don't have any of those things. So for me is, how do I do good in this particular environment is more for me, how do I achieve like work-life balance, like ensuring that
That's a heavy topic.
ensuring that I able to, because we all here for the right reasons. We all here to kind of make an impact on people's lives, and we try our best. And sometimes our best might mean that we don't sleep as much. Our best might mean that we take homework. Our best might mean that we kind of try to stretch our bodies to the point where we're miserable. I know when I first met Karen, I did not have this many gray hairs. But things have changed significantly, and it's kind of difficult to achieve work-life balance, but it's something that you need to do. So it's whether it's tuning out on weekends, whether it's putting all in for 5 days and saying for these 2 just leave me alone. So it's very difficult to achieve. Sometimes you have things that you deem to be like extremely important, you can't let go. But I feel like sometimes you need to set like very clear like boundaries for yourself, and what you can and cannot do as an individual.
Is that easy for you? Because you say that, and I started to laugh because in the new environment I am, yes, I'm good with not working on the weekends unless it's extremely necessary. But then people are like, you do know that you're starting to message us at 5 a.m., right? And I'm like, oh, well, that's when my brain starts. And I didn't think about it. And I'm not sure if I could say I have I think I have a better work-life balance, but I don't know if any of us here could say that we have a good work-life balance.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think I have a great one, even though I'm advocating for one. I think it's pretty okay. But similar to what you said, is when my brain is working. Sometimes I remember something at 9 o'clock in the night, and I would just be like, send this message, so that in the event in the morning it slips me, or you want to kind of, and this space is weird. This space is, it never ends. You don't go home and your job stops
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
mud. You kind of, everything needs to be rolling, is a process. So even sending that one message could trigger 3 steps after, which would have like significant impact in what you're trying to do long term. So it's hard, and sometimes your mind never tunes off. I don't think that's something that we could get away from. I don't think it's wholly awful. It's just a sacrifice, I guess, that we have to make to do good.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm willing to try though, because I find people really play in your face and demand too much of your time, and also think that you work on their hours and on their time,
Yeah.
including on weekends, and I don't really subscribe to that. One thing that I do miss about being a practicing Adventist is the Sabbath, because at least, you know, like it or not, that sort of having that as a sort of religious guidance really did encourage people to leave you alone for between Friday evening and Saturday evening. And maybe I should just tell people that I am instituting my own Sabbath, because I really do need to be left alone. I do not thrive in a life where people are constantly contacting me. I hate WhatsApp. I hate social media. I hate anything that. I miss a landline. I miss landlines. I miss when that was the only way to get me. And if I wasn't there, that you would have to figure it out or try again. I feel like people do not leave each other enough. I schedule my emails out. If I understand what y'all saying about, sending that quick message. But because I know it triggers many other things, that's why I'm like, you know what? Let me migrate this to email so that I can schedule it. You'll see it at 8 o'clock. And by the time I'm ready to deal with the fallout that will occur, like I'm already working on the next day, because, then I'm ready. But I did it as I remembered. Even for something that you mentioned, I messaged somebody yesterday about something very work-related, and they said, you know what, you don't feel no obligation to respond to me now. You can message me back on Monday, but I did feel this was important enough to reach out to you, but it is not like a ASAP kind of thing. We can deal with this on Monday, but I just did not want to forget. So here's the message. Feel free to get back to me on Monday. I feel like sometimes there is that internal pressure to keep going, to keep doing, and then you realize that you have nothing to give, that you're stretched out on your bed with your eyes blurry, red from staring at screens, your throat is tired because you've been talking all day, and then what do you give?
I feel like we need to take a breath right now, because that's so real. That's such the reality of trying to do good and trying to ensure that it's at a certain standard. And I think, especially when you're trying to do both sides, so you're trying to interact with the beneficiaries, you're trying to ensure that the person that's on the ground that needs your assistance has availability to you. And then on the other side, the persons that you're accountable to, you're trying to make sure that they are happy, that the reports are written in a certain way, that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, and it could drain you. So what are some of the things that we do like to, Leanne talked about scheduling email. So what are some other things that we could do to have like resistance to this?
Yeah, I think I'm about to enter my second phone bag. I think I'm about to get a second phone because for me, one of the first things that I did when I realized it was becoming too much, I kind of turned off my notification for emails.
Okay.
I found for me, because it's so hard to shut off, on Friday, if I got email at 7 o'clock and it just flashed across my screen, it will push me to
Touch it.
to touch it, to touch my laptop, to do things that you shouldn't be doing on Fridays. Also, I find too that now my personal phone has become my work phone,
Yeah.
and I have almost 200 people additional to the people that I actually know and, interact with family and stuff like that on my phone, enjoy people, good people. But sometimes that could come with, random messages, random requests, and, sometimes even looking at, messages from specific people could kind of trigger, the need to go and work and need to go and adjust things. It makes it, very difficult to navigate. So I think, for me, I think a second phone is a step in the right direction. Just so that when I pick up this second phone, I know that there's no anxiety attached to it. There's no
And you
fear.
can post what you want on
Yeah,
that phone.
exactly. Exactly. There's no fear or anything. It's just my personal phone, not my yeah.
So that the second phone be like your landline, what Leanna's talking about. Like this phone, you get me from 8 to 4. After that, if I check it on the weekends,
Yeah, but
lucky.
you could. That's the thing. So that doesn't. When I say I turn off my notification, that doesn't mean that I don't check my emails on weekends. That means that. Sorry, that means that I actually schedule myself, or when I'm ready to go, I can go. So it's not attacking me. So it's a lot easier to deal with. So I'm not saying inaccessible. You can't get Christon. It's just when Christon is ready to be engaged in that manner, Christon would make himself available fully, and I think that's healthy.
Yeah.
A lot healthier than, what was happening previously.
I remember when I started to try to set these boundaries and not respond to the 1,000,001 emails on Sundays and all of that stuff, and I felt so guilty. I felt like I realized I had to do a lot of self work to realize that my work was being connected to my worth. So therefore, if I was not accessible, if I was not responding, if I was not on top of the ball forever, never letting that ball drop, then what am I getting paid for? What am I existing for? And it took a lot to realize that rest is productive, and that's what the Sabbath is for. Whether you're practicing or not, you as a human, you need to rest. And in that rest, you could find the energy and it's not even that you're working for the rest. Like, you just need to rest. Rest is productive. So if it is at a day in a week or weekend or whatever else, you're just like, my bed and I are one out.
Yeah.
The errands will have to run themselves. The emails will have to wait. It's something that's needed, and it's a challenge for me. It's a challenge to separate those two things and still feel as if I have words, still feel that I'm contributing to society. It's been a journey. It's been a journey, but I mean, it's also been a journey just because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to do good. So I went from wanting to like own an orphanage to wanting to work in a church, the whole missionary period, like Logos Hope. Like, I wanted to be on the boat, like, ride or die. And then my body was just like, you do know that you get sick if you miss a meal. Like, the rough and tough life isn't really, you're not really cracked out to it. And then I was like, oh, great, gonna do social work because I'm going to teach everyone life skills. I'm going to be the next motivational speaker. Oh my God, I was going to change the world. And then I realized I didn't have good boundaries. which meant that I was just absorbing everything that
Yeah.
everyone was telling me, which is another challenge of doing good.
Yeah.
So yeah, boundaries are tricky.
Yeah, I think there are many facets to doing good. I think there are the people, as you said, that are on the boats. There are the people that are, running through the jungle just ready to save. But there are also the people behind the laptops, behind the technical stuff that allow the other persons that are, very passion driven, very in the community to be able to do what they do. And I think that is also as important because we, even, teaching proposals and, how to write and stuff like that, that is not everyone's strong suit. So there's definitely a need for, good across all margins. And I think that's important to acknowledge as well, especially when we look at ourselves as do-gooders, because we may not feel as though, we do as good as, the person that actually hands out the packages. But if we're in the position to get the person that hands out the packages the money to do what they do, I think that's just as, pivotal to that implementation.
Yeah, I agree with you. So I manage a mentorship program, and sometimes I do see like the real do-gooders as my mentors. So they're the ones who have the relationships. They're the ones who get called. They're the ones who spend time with the children. So I really did see it like that. And I remember what shifted my perspective was actually the mentees. One Christmas, I went up there to do something or, drop off something, I don't remember, and I got a card and a handmade ornament that I still have. And they said to me, if we could meet you all over again and you brought this program all over again, like, we would be so happy. And I was in tears, like, I still have that card. Like I said, I still have the ornament because it really underscored to me exactly what you said. Like, there are people who do, who are at the front line, who take the pictures and stuff like that. But then there are other people like us who make sure that everybody's in the right place at the right time, receiving the training, receiving the support, receiving the counseling, to make sure that they can get this stuff done, And I think that we definitely do have a role to play because I'm sure that you both have seen where the absence of implementation in the face of a good idea means that your good idea doesn't get done.
Yep.
That's all.
Right? That organizations with some of the best and brightest people behind them don't want to book a room for a conference, don't want to extend to their network to get them to come to a workshop. They don't want to get those things. They don't want to book a caterer. But these are the things that make that work go.
Yeah.
And there are some people that just can't do it. They can't do it. Sometimes it's so hard for them to detach from what their passion is that even facilitating their passion sometimes could be difficult.
Yeah.
So you need these children to be at this room at a specific time, and they just care so much about the children that they can't even fathom how they're gonna get this process started or how they're gonna get the money to feed them. And a lot of the time that results in them paying out of their own pocket, them using their own money to facilitate activities. And yes, it is good in a sense, but it's not necessarily the greatest idea to invest so much of your personal belongings or money into action when there are other avenues you could get money towards that action as well.
Yeah, so I think that is one of the many conundrums of our sector about let's have boundaries, let's not take our own personal money to achieve things because
Kind of have to sometimes, I think.
Yeah, I do agree. I do agree. All right. So I'll not backtrack, but I'll take back piece of it. I think it is necessary sometimes to push things along in terms of like, if you plan to start off an initiative, if you know there's not a lot of donor backing in a specific area, or you have challenges, mobilizing funds, I think that is good. But I think there are also other avenues to achieve that without running yourself into either debt or bankruptcy as a result of, as a result of your good. Because if you don't have the money to do it, then you can't do it anymore anyway.
It's unsustainable.
It's unsustainable, right?
Yeah.
So, right. So I'll just take that with pinch of salt and a lot of nuancing, because there are some people who continually do it, but
Yeah.
yet they don't want to put reports into place. They don't want to put structures into place. So therefore, they're going to have an ever-ending
Yeah.
cycle. And then there's just sometimes when the man and you, the man, and the system's just not working, and you know the problem is in front of you,
Right.
and this could fix it.
Yeah.
And sometimes we just need to fix it.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Sometimes people also save towards it, right? Or put their own business in place to make it happen. So people find ways to make it work. Teachers do it all the time. They take out their
Exactly.
money and buy all
Yeah.
kind of things for their classrooms, for their students, pay for lunches. So even at all levels, folks find ways to fix problems that are immediately in front of them when structures don't enable them to rely on them to get it done.
Right, exactly. So we heard about one of Leanne's triumphs, one of those moments when she was like, yes, I will write these reports. I will deal with all the program management stress if it means that these mentees are touched and provided for in a way that would bring a positive change in the future. Christian, do you have any of those aha moments?
I feel like, it might be a cliche, it might be a ghetto, but I feel like everything I do in this space gives me that feeling, which I think is,
You're on like a permanent dopamine high.
which is weird. But for me, I enjoy putting out the research paper. I enjoy just as much. I enjoy putting out, videos, and because I know the long-term impact it could have if somebody even clicks on them, and I think that's important to me. I also enjoy the opportunities when you have these grantees, you fight with them because it's a fight. You fight with them for financials, you fight with them for narrative, and then at the end there's a closing ceremony or graduation, and you just feel like, okay, I could rest easy knowing that at least 20 people that entered this program or did something, it made a positive impact in their life. And yeah, to me that is always the major selling point when you ask me, why do you work in the social development sector? Because that's it. You do it for the love. You do it to change people's lives across the board, regardless of where you come from, creed, race, ethnicity. You just do it for doing good sake, and that's it for me.
You definitely sound like you're on a permanent dopamine high, and I cannot relate, because there are days I am like, Leanne, why are we doing this? Like, why?
Yeah.
But I love that for you.
But maybe I'm speaking from my place, which is 5 years of experience. So you guys have a lot more experience in this space than me, and maybe that dopamine. Maybe I'm in a honeymoon stage of social development. But maybe after 10 years here, I'll go like, oh my gosh, this is enough. Maybe I'll have that eventually, but I have not hit that point as yet. I mean, it's not to say there weren't difficult times, or there were times where I feel like I was just ugh. But for me in general, once I see the final output, I am usually very calm with whatever happened before, with what it took to get to the final output. So it don't really matter to me if we had 3 fights. If at the end of these 3 fights you get what you meant to do done, that warms my heart enough to make me want to do it again.
Okay. Well, I think yes, those grand moments are great to live for, but those little ones are also quite wonderful too. So, for example, I was getting something done with my car, and I had this really interesting conversation with these two men who I was there with. And because I'm a feminist, so that's what brought me to this space. And they started talking about gender in a very interesting way. I won't repeat what they said. And I started to laugh, and they were like, "What did you find so funny?" I said, "Well, I teach gender studies, so it's interesting to hear you in this space talking like this." And I was like, "Oh, the indoctrinating your children." I was like, "Calm down." I'm at university, so your kids are fine. And, I wasn't able to, I'm not sure if I changed their minds on some things that they would have said, some of the things that we were talking about, but I did get them to see like a really key part of like what I talk about, which is an equal relation of gender. So something as simple as that. Obviously, I don't name it like that in the space that I'm in, but I was able to translate the concept. So they're talking about how, men is some of the top chefs in Barbados. When you look, it's all these top chef men. I say, yes, exactly, I agree with you. So when it's time to be compensated, men are at the forefront. Yep. But what happens in your house? It was like, in your house, your woman got cut. I was like, so why is it that the top chefs that you can think about in the island, when we call in top chefs' name, we're not calling women's names, but when it comes time to call, when money is involved, we can rattle off the men. Like, that's an unequal relation. What you see as labor for the house is a woman's work, but what you see as labor for value in a public space is men's work, right? And why is that? And how do we change that? And I didn't get a lot of pushback. And so I consider that a win because, we was quarreling about everything else.
I think that might have struck home.
Yeah. yes.
I had a similar conversation. The gentleman was trying to say that we waste our money on these gender-based violence prevention campaigns because a banner is not going to do anything. Well, I'm thinking, well, here we are talking about said banner, so I think it could do something. And it was just that interesting conversation, hearing his views and how somehow the blame for the violence kept being centered on the woman.
Yeah.
And I was like, but you're saying that it takes a strong man, so therefore it takes a strong man not to do it, to just let the woman be and exist. Mm-hmm. I was like, so then shouldn't we work with the man to be a strong man? And what is a strong man? And he could not define a strong man.
Right.
But he could define what the woman is doing wrong and all the things that needs to change in that sense instead of paying for a banner. But he kept pausing like to think about it when I was asking the questions. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, at least you're thinking and trying to find the answers to it. And for me, you said the word feminism, and I was just like, I remember when I was younger, I used to be all over the place, like, I am a feminist, growing up in church, and I'm like, no. And everybody's just like, you are the scum of the earth. What is wrong with you? Have you not read your Bible enough? And I'm like, I have. Have you?
It's true.
So all of these challenges, but those interactions, those being in the street is what fuels me to be able to do the reports. So I don't have that constant dopamine high that Christon has. I like my computer. It's safe. Type. Okay, I need to actually see the output of me being on my computer. I actually need to be where the NGOs are, see their work, understand who the people are that I'm fighting for, because if I'm defending you to get a grant or something, I need to be able to be like, yes, I could put my head on a block that these people are doing good work. I've met with them. I've met with their beneficiaries. It's much needed. And that gives me that kind of fuel to go forward.
Yeah. And when people hear feminist, people think radical feminism all the time.
Yes.
And there are a multiplicity of terms that I guess Leigh would be more equipped to get into. But what I would say is, that does not take away from the movement. In the 1930s, when the rat started, there were radicals.
Yeah.
It was necessary at the time to make significant change in the lives of people. So there's always a space for radicals, but it's not to use, for instance, radical feminism to kind of shut down all feminists and say these people are problematic and this is why this movement should not work or would not work going forward. And even like looking at those advocacy campaigns to me, yes, they're meant to stop the like end violence against women. It's meant to end violence against women, but sometimes people, I guess, take it like too nuanced. Like the aim is not to like everybody that sees the post is not gonna automatically stop.
Change, yeah.
But if, for instance, that poster crosses maybe a child in his early stages, seeing things happening to his mom that he doesn't agree with, and it could have a long-term impact on him in terms of, he changes his behavior. I don't want to use to say eventually all the abusers will die out, but it kind of leads to maybe a better society if most of the children across the region, across the world, see these campaigns and go like, okay, that's wrong. I shouldn't be doing that. And then they become sensitive. They become better with women. They stop drinking. They stop, facilitating abuse and stuff like that. I think those are like the crux of these campaigns. There are persons that are too far along. The reality is you probably need severe counseling. You've been doing it too long. You could, relapse. You could go back into a situation. You could be easily triggered. Those persons need greater intervention. And I don't think that those campaigns subtract from those greater interventions. I think those greater interventions happen. But those persons need to also identify themselves for those campaigns to actually move along and take root and, facilitate the change that we want to see across the board.
Yeah. I think working on this issue with young people has been particularly telling. First, because you think that young people are a little bit more progressive, and I've realized that's not the case.
Yeah.
They're not wholesale very progressive on an issue like that, and it's because the justification at its core remains the same, but the way it gets articulated shows up differently in a different time. So they're going to talk about if I invest in you and you break that investment, then, you bring out my anger or you bring out my wrath, right? Which is women as property,
Yeah.
right? Or you see things where, like street harassment, there are ways that gets justified. So how else am I going to talk to you? How else am I going to make friends? How about not like this, especially when women have repeatedly said over time, no, we don't like that. I also find that backlash has gotten really strong. And it's also coming from young people, right? So I don't know. I feel like the intervention really gets needed at all spheres, because while you will find some really wonderful young people who, you feel hopeful about an issue like this, then sometimes you're scratching your head. Especially like something as simple as like I talk a lot about talking to young people about consent. Like it's not clicking, right? And the sort of possessive narrative of relationships, this person is mine, and how that gets interpreted into a whole range of harmful behaviors. They talk about tagging them. My students were telling me about sharing your location on Snapchat, just leaving it on, and having your partner as your close friend so that they always know where you are. These kinds of things is just like, I'm in love. This is what I should do. And I'm like, no, for everybody, don't do that. Like, this is a form of possessiveness, which leads back to like another, like a core issue around a partner as property that, like I said, is very old, but it's just getting reinterpreted with technology, with change of time, stuff like that.
Like, you know that I am so ready for this conversation.
Yeah.
Like, she mentioned street harassment, she mentioned consent. And I want to start with the consent because I don't think it's just the younger generation. I think it's how we are brought up. As in, you have a child, the child sees auntie, and you're like, you have to give auntie a hug. And I'm like, it's the child's body. If the child does not want to hug me, I'm okay. Just give me a high five. And they're like, no. And I'm like,
You must hug us.
I'm like, consent starts from a young time, understanding that this is your body and you have control over it. And then you go into the gym and the instructor just whips out his phone and decides to make you content without asking for consent.
Oh
and
my God. Can I just, like, everybody just out with the phone, like, all the time. Like, can I please?
just exist.
Can I please?
Could you ask me a question? Let me move out of your frame. Let me have, so it's not just young, it's
It's all over.
because also like, yeah, and a lot of adults be like, no, you must take the picture. And I'm like, why? Is it a family photo for private use, or is it a photo that you want to share with everyone? And this human being is not being allowed to say no.
I also wanted to add one quick thing. I made that point to say that the advocacy programs, the banner that we talked about before, like those things were in tandem with other things.
Yes.
So like those things just don't stand alone.
Yes.
So I think the importance of even like public facing advocacy campaigns is that they work at systemic levels. So you're working on policy, you're working on legislation, you're working on changing hearts and minds, and you're reinforcing that message in public places. So you see a banner, you see a social media post, but these things don't stand alone, right? Like that's not how it works. And that, of course, a banner alone won't be effective. A bus stop, a bench pit poster thing won't stand alone. It's thoughts and prayers and policy, right?
Yeah. But that's what usually people associate it with. People just see the banner, just see bus stop and goes like, what is going to do for anything?
Yeah.
I just like think that's the end of it. But even in today's society, it's impossible to fall in peace. Like back in the day, you cannot fall anywhere in town, anywhere in public without being seen and made fun of. It's very hard to operate in this digital environment that's not conducive for just human living. We all make mistakes. We will fall, we will drop. It's just don't capture it for me. I don't need the memory.
I'm glad you said that though, because I find too, as we think about like social media and stuff like that, that I also worry about people who are worried that people just do it for cameras. I mean, I understand how doing things on social media and making yourself visible on these spaces do bring you money, notoriety, and access to spaces of influence. But I worry that, once that goes, like, what is your passion, what's your drive, what's your ethos? And then in moments where you fall down and break down, like...
You stop.
Yeah, that you stop because, like, what was really behind it in the first place, right? And also, I don't like to see when people do things for people, like nice things for people. Oh, a hamper, and the first thing you're gonna do is have a camera in that person's face. Here's me doing good. Here's me giving back.
But for me, there are appropriate ways to do certain programs. And I've seen and heard of instances where, for instance, you're going to deliver, let's say the COVID hampers is a good example. You're going to deliver COVID hampers to vulnerable households. You walk through a gap with 10 houses with 10 people towards Patsy house in the back. It's obvious that those 10 people know that Patsy going through something, and that's not the intention. The intention is to help her.
Yes.
And you can't kind of make those persons worse off just to deliver a hamper. And I think
Yeah.
that's the challenge, because sometimes everybody just want to do good, but it don't matter, the after effects of doing that specific good beyond that moment. Cameras, no, you know, and
People's personal stories also.
even for me, dealing with grants and grantees and stuff like that, if you tell me these specific people that you're working with cannot be photographed, cannot be, cannot be shown, cannot be seen, they're young, they're at risk of violence and stuff like that, I don't need to see them.
Yeah.
I don't need to see them.
Sandrina Davis, another one of my ride or dies, she said, honor the people that you are serving. And that's something I firmly believe in, ethical storytelling. Just take a picture of the hamper itself. You don't need to have a picture of Patsy and all of her house and everything to show that she is in distress.
Yeah.
You could write the story in a way to tell Patsy's story without allowing me to be able to pinpoint where Patsy is and who did what to Patsy. You could leave her with her integrity. You could leave her with respect, the same way you want to be treated. Another good thing when it comes to consent and doing good is, would I want somebody to speak about me in this way? Would I want my business in the street like this before I press post or before I submit this report?
And then have that reproduced. And then my trauma is just living another life without me, and a life that I can't take back, and a narrative ultimately I can't control.
Yeah.
That's not fair. You know?
I'll give one example that I think does it pretty well. When I was at school at SMS, the canteen...
What is SMS?
St. Michael's School, sorry. The canteen, there's a line for, you go in and you purchase it right away, and then there's a line for like orders, and I don't know if this still exists. This was a while ago. There's a line for orders, and you don't know if persons are going there because they have orders or if they're not in the situation to collect food. And sometimes that was the case, and I thought that was very well done, because you can't tell, for instance, who's being given lunch or provided with lunch versus who, paid for lunch and stuff like that. I think that's important to, I don't want to use the word blend, but to blend those persons into the space so that they themselves are not, picked at, made fun of. There's, as you said, there's ethical ways to do it that make it, sustainable for the person as well, and they could operate as normal, because they're normal people. They're just not in a position to whatever.
Yeah. I also think that also gets, it also gives the ability to see it less as a sort of individual moral failing, and something that, you show how things are just working against you, whether it be like systemic poverty within the household, or a bad shake, or even as we think about our times now, like how families still have not recovered from COVID, still have not recovered from massive job losses, the mental toll that lockdowns took, the sort of psychological trauma that happened when there was domestic violence within homes at that time, that you didn't feel like you had an outlet or any support for. And now everybody's just telling you to get back to life, get back to normal, but some people just have not recovered from then, right? And so when you treat people in ways that are fair to them, that are just to their experiences, then you are playing a part in their lives to help them to recover and potentially to see the good of living in community as well. I think that that's something that I just really want to emphasize, that we're just taking care of each other. When I think about how my grandmother talked about growing up, and even the things that we glorify as the good old Bajan days, were just people taking care of each other, living communally, that we seem to have lost, but I would say not completely. There are still people doing
Yes.
that. I see a lot of good examples of that within the queer community, of how, you just make do with each other and you rely on each other to build community. And I think that that's something that we just really have to emphasize. We keep looking to say, this is me, I did this by myself, this individual achievement, I got it alone. No, that's absolutely a lie.
Yeah.
I got through university because my grandmother gave me money.
Yeah.
Right? I got through secondary school because somebody pressed my clothes, somebody gave me lunch money, somebody cleaned my shoes. I did not have to take care of a sibling, so I could do my homework.
Yes.
I had a quiet place to do my homework. I had lights. Somebody was paying the light bill and the water bill, so that all of the conditions that I needed to focus and to ultimately do well were being taken care of. And if we don't see it like that, we kind of miss the point, and then we say, oh, I got this alone, and then you think that everybody who isn't making it or who isn't alleviating themselves out of bad situations can't do it because they're not trying. And that's never the case. That's never the case.
Yeah. We talked about all the stuff that we went through, our triumphs, and how we navigate doing good in our realities. But what if you had to speak to somebody who's coming in to themselves, trying to decide, because a lot of persons don't even know what social development is and what is this do-gooding life that we do. What advice do you have for a future do-gooder?
For me, I think for young professionals especially, a bit of it is coming into the space and knowing, for instance, your worth. Now, this could be monetary, this could be time, this could be, just your effort. Just know, if you give 100%, ensure that there's 100% given to you and given back to you. I think that is very important. See spaces, feel out spaces, be very aware, because there are chances that individuals could take advantage of young persons and their willingness to do stuff. So just be very careful. Come into it with a good heart, come into it with a good mind as expected, but just know your worth as a young professional entering this space. Sometimes I see it too often that we bring people into this space and, take advantage of them, and it needs to be ended. People need to see, just because you're 23, just because you're 25, it doesn't matter your age. If you add value, full stop, and know your worth when you join this space.
That's rich.
It's funny that Christon mentioned knowing your worth, because I ask people to do things for free a lot, because sometimes I don't have money to pay them, or the rooms that I'm putting them in similarly don't have money to pay them, but I see the value of their expertise. So I would say pay people when you can.
Yes.
And also, if you're going to constantly put people in spaces or rooms where they're doing unpaid labor, also put them in spaces or rooms, call their names in spaces or rooms where they can also be compensated.
Preach.
I think that the NGO sector should abolish unpaid internships. There's no unpaid life. Everything costs money. And I think that if you're going to be asking people to do things for months on end, you should compensate them accordingly. I think those are the things. In terms of the professional, like the person who wants to do it, I would say just put mechanisms in place for burnouts, put mechanisms in place for, I would say, just as you structure your time, as you structure your resources, also build in time for rest, build in time for breaks, schedule time away. I think those things are really important, and that's also what keeps you going. And also, what else did I want to say? Also, make sure you have sound structure and good people behind you. I think, as we talked about, you want to just get into the field and get things going, but having, being registered at KAIPO, making sure that you have a board, all these things help to keep you accountable. And then you also have people behind you saying, hey, what do you need? Or maybe you should take a break. That's what I always tell Renako and Rondell. Maybe you should not say yes to this opportunity. Are they paying you? Like, maybe you should lie down. You are young people. Take some time for yourself. Do something that you enjoy. When's the last time you went to a party or a restaurant or something like that? I think they don't lie down enough, and that's my advice to them. And to all of you out there, lie down and turn off your phone.
Oh, no. For me, you also said something that triggers something. For me, is when you can do. So when they come into this space, they come in with a lot of passion. I mean, I entered this space based on a gentleman's agreement with Carrie. Just knowing that, that I would have the experience that I needed to, use my degree. Because for a lot of young people in Barbados, I will speak for Barbados specifically, they need the experience. They need, opportunities. There's not a lot of opportunities going around and just giving away to people that, for instance, don't know anybody.
Right.
I'll just say that.
That's fair.
That's the reality. And sometimes people need experience, but when you can do. So when you could pay them, make sure that you pay them what they deserve. That's all I see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I just want to, what she stood out to me is she said, keep good people around you. And you all have been my good people. Like, if we wanted to get a little biblical, it'd be like when Moses was fighting and he had two people holding up the hands so that the sun wouldn't set. That has been you all to me in my journey of doing good. And I just want to thank you so much for being who you are, supporting me the way that y'all have supported me, and being here today.
Well, thank you, Karen.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. And, I know me and Leanne have seen kindness become its own beast, I would say. It started as an idea. It started as something, you were very passionate about, but it's taken on a life of its own. And for us to be the first persons, I think, on this podcast is amazing for us as well.
Yes,
And,
definitely.
we really appreciate the opportunity to help you and, see you do good as well.
Exactly. I know for sure. Even as I was getting ready, my partner was like, well, you're leaving your house at this time. On this day, and it's not a work day. And I was like, yeah. Because if it's like one person who I know calls my name in rooms of opportunity, I know that Karen will do that. I don't ever doubt it. So if you have somebody that pours into you, then I think you owe a duty to pour back into them, to give to them in ways that they want you to. I believe you should show up how people want you to show up. So I know that it took some thoughts, but I knew I was going to do it. So I'm really honored, yes, as Christon said, to be here. And I am certain of your success.